I knew I was in trouble the second I touched the brake lever. All I heard was worse than the sound, if you can believe it, was the fact that the brakes also refused to stop. It was like no one was home and I was headed down the chute of death. I had originally planned on doing some quick laps to get some tech practice in, but with the sound that was scaring all of Mother Nature and zero stopping powers and not wanting to die in the process, I decided to head back to the shop and see what I could do to fix my brake situation. Whew! We're back in the shop. I got the bike on the stand. Let's see what we're working with here. That sounds terrible. Yeah, there's definitely something wrong here. But hold on a second, not all is lost. Before you jump on the internet and order yourself a brand new set of brakes and pads and rotors and all the bits and pieces, let's see if we can fix this situation with a little maintenance. So today we're gonna fix the squeaky brake and try to regain our stopping power. In fact, it's more than a squeaky brake. It's a downright howl. It's a cry for help, and we gotta fix this fast. Let's get into it. First thing you have to do is you gotta get the wheel off. Luckily for me, it's just the front brake that seems to be having the problem here. So you're gonna pull off your front wheel so you can get a better look at it. First things first, what is going on with this rotor? So taking a look at my rotor, it's obvious something has gone really wrong here. You see this blue bit, this anodized, discolored, semi-burnt looking coating that's on these? Not sure what I got on the rotor. I guess at this point it really doesn't matter, but it's really cooked itself on there and we just have to work to get this off the best that we can. All right, let's move on to the pads now and see what we're working with here. And just in case you don't know, once you have the wheel out, don't squeeze the lever, no matter what. Don't do it. I know it's tempting. You want to squeeze it. It's like touching the hot stove. But the pistons inside there will seize up together like vice grips and it will be a real hassle to get them apart. So do yourself a favor. Don't touch the lever when the wheel is out. Moving on. This particular set of brakes is the Shimano XTR 9120s. It's their 4-piston. And they happen to have these fancy brake pads with these cooling fins and all that good stuff. But to be honest, all of the Shimanos are going to be very similar in how they're constructed. You've got this through pin, and on mine there happens to be not only a cotter pin or a safety pin in the end, but you have to unthread it, holding everything together. Holy crap, these pads look absolutely cooked. They are glazed, they are stained. They should definitely not look like this. Dirty's one thing, but glazed is an absolute sign you have got some contaminants on there that you need to get off. But on the bright side, the pads still have a lot of thickness left in them, which means they have a lot of life left. So the lack of stopping power is not a result of the pads just being worn out. So it's worth trying to salvage these. We can work with this. We're gonna need a few things though. We're going to need some gloves. Preferably something you can work with so you don't transfer your dirty hand oil into the thing we're trying to clean. That's the last thing you want. We're gonna need sandpaper, 80 grit. We're gonna need rubbing alcohol, the strong stuff. We might also need some brake cleaner. I happen to have automotive brake cleaner. Let's tackle the pads first. You're gonna wanna soak your rag or your shop towel in rubbing alcohol, and you're just gonna wanna wipe off the pads as best you can. You're gonna notice tons of stuff coming off of there. Just keep going until stuff doesn't come off of there. You're gonna wanna set it aside and repeat the process on the other side. Now, you'll notice right away the pads are going to look way better. We removed a ton of the surface gunk and junk that ends up building up on these things, but we still have the problem that we have to resolve, and that's the glazing. That's the bit that's not allowing enough friction to build up, so these brakes are being not only noisy, but ineffective. By the way, using these heavy-duty shop towels is super convenient because you don't care. The trouble with these paper towels, the paper-based versions of it, they tend to leave a lot of lint on the stuff that you're cleaning. So make sure that you clean that off. Once we're finally all done with some sort of lint-free rag, you definitely don't want to leave all that debris bits in the system. Now, before we move on, if the rubbing alcohol you have doesn't clean all the black stuff off, feel free to use the brake cleaner. Now, this stuff is super strong. It'll eat right through your gloves. Be careful what you spray this stuff on and wipe it off. Now, you may be asking yourself at this point, if we're going to eventually be sanding these things, why not just skip to the sanding straight off the bat, right? Makes sense. But what we don't know here is how deep that contaminant has gone. And starting off just sanding, you risk potentially leaving some of it on there. And to be honest, if you don't wipe that crap off first, you're gonna wind up with mess all over the place. It's just easier to clean it first and then sand it and then clean it one more time when you're all done. I'm using an 80 grit sandpaper, which is more than coarse enough to give these things a quick buff. You're not trying to sand the whole pad here. You're just trying to get off the glazed bits and give it a fresh coating. Also, make sure the rubbing alcohol has dried. This stuff evaporates pretty quickly, but you don't want to sand wet brake pads. You're going to want to continue sanding. Now, I like to do it in line with the way the rotor moves across the pads. It just keeps things nice. Your goal here is just to remove the shiny bits that are on there so you get down to what looks like a fresh bit of pad. So these are looking pretty good. We're going to give them a quick final rinse with the rubbing alcohol and the lint-free terry cloth. Let's move on to the rotor while these things are drying. Ideally, you should take the rotor off the wheel in order to get these things clean and do what you need to do with them. Now, I didn't happen to have a tool handy, so I left them on the wheel. Not the best thing, but it does work in a pinch. Bad news on the rotor. I tried to clean it with the rubbing alcohol at first. Same process. You get the rag wet, you wipe it down. No luck. This stuff has burnt basically itself onto these things. I gave it a quick spray with the brake cleaner, being extremely careful not to get this shiz on anything except for the metal rotor. Now, because I wasn't able to get the rotor clean, I had to resort to the sandpaper. I had to get that glazing off to give it a fresh surface in order for the pads and the rotors to rebed themselves and give them the best chance possible. As you can see, sanding it roughed up the surface enough. I think we have a chance here. I'm going to give the rotors a quick clean. I'm going to put everything back together. We have to rebed our brakes just like if they were brand new. So what you're going to want to do, find yourself some flat roads, some downhills easier if you don't want to pedal your little butt off. And you're going to want to get up to a speed, medium speed, and you're going to want to slow down, but not to a complete stop. Do that a few times. If you can get going even faster, slow down, but not to a complete stop, and repeat. The point of all of this is to try and heat up the system, heat up the rotor, heat up the pads, and get that pad material to transfer onto the rotor. Ideally, what this does is it allows for the brake materials to bind together more, so you're not just relying on the mechanical force of the pads being in contact with the rotor for stopping power. Now that we've got that done, you can see they are not only quiet, but they actually work. Last step, go back to the trail you were on and get your tech practice in, or whatever ride you had planned for the day. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. If you have any comments or any other hacks that you want to share, leave them below. Would love to hear them. Grant, El Rubike, thanks a bunch. Bye.